Welcome to the Wednesday, March 1st, 2023 Garrison Board of Education regular workshop meeting and budget presentation. Jocelyn, will you call the roll, please?
Jocelyn Apicello.
Here.
David Gelber.
Here.
Madeline Julian.
Here.
Courtney McCarthy.
Here.
Kent Schott. Matthew Spicer.
Here.
Sarah Tormey.
Here. All right, I'll go to the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, we have accept agenda changes. I have one proposed change, and that is to reverse the order for the presentation and approval of the new Spanish textbook series with the budget presentation. So we'll do the Spanish textbook series presentation first, unless anyone objects. Our Spanish teacher is here this evening. This will allow her to go home and prepare for tomorrow. All right, anyone else have any other recommended changes, suggestions? Okay. Then be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the agenda as amended. All right, all in favor, please say aye. Oh, I need a motion, sorry. Well, there goes that.
So moved. Second.
Got that? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Great. Nays? Abstentions? Sorry, it's been a month. I'm a little out of practice. We'll get this. Don't worry. All right, next up we have president's remarks. I only have a couple of things. First, we received a letter from the Continental Village Volunteer Fire Department and Ambulance Service. The governor has signed a new provision similar to the senior citizens tax exemption that would allow for volunteer ambulance workers and firefighters to receive basically a tax break. There is a letter the letter and then an explanation from our legal counsel has been posted in board docs. It's in the library. It's sort of where you find your weekly updates. So if you could all take a look at that. If you can't find it, let me know. We can forward it. For the next meeting, we'll have a discussion. If you have questions, go ahead and send them on to Joe. And then we would look towards possibly the end of the month. We would need to hold a public hearing similar to what we did with the senior citizens tax exemption. So this is just a heads up. This is coming down the pipeline. We're starting to hear about it from the community, and we'd like to take some time to review this. So, and then also we're entering budget season. So our neighboring districts, O'Neill has invited us to their budget meetings. I'm planning to attend tomorrow's, and we'll report back. If anyone else wants to go to future budget presentations at O'Neill, just let me know. And then in really recent and exciting news, I am told, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, David, that the Haldane boys basketball won in double overtime versus Hamilton. Was it 51-46? I got it?
Well.
All right, good. So congratulations to the Haldane boys basketball team. And this was a big game?
Very big game.
Very big game. Okay.
Playoff game.
Playoff game. Well, hopefully they keep. Yes. And David still made it here. So thank you for leaving in the final minute to come join us. All right, that's all I have. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Carl.
I just have a few brief updates. First, I just want to let the board and community know that we were able to host all 3 high school districts here in Garrison. To my knowledge, it hasn't been done, maybe way in the past, but of course with the pandemic, we weren't doing that. So Highland Falls, Haldane, and Putt Valley sent their superintendents, assistant superintendents, directors, principals. We gave them a tour of our beautiful new building. It was all arranged by James Yap, and I do thank him for reaching out, and there's ongoing collaboration, which is very exciting. But when we met with them, in addition to giving them a tour and sharing some of our programs, we talked about a lot of the new and exciting initiatives happening at the middle school. Things like living environment regions exams for all and what that means when our students move on to their high schools. Additionally, we're thinking about piloting the U.S. history regions next year. It'll be optional. This year is the pilot, but then next year it would count if our students do well, and it would be strictly optional for eighth graders. Our civic readiness initiative that James and Chrissy Valvano are leading, that was discussed. They're all honoring that credit. We talked about program alignment, our language department, and soon you'll hear a little bit more about a new language program in the area of Spanish. So it was very productive. With Haldane particularly, we got into an additional topic, which is potentially partnering for special education programs. Both of us have some students that are placed out of district, so we're hoping that if we have some similar students, that somewhere in the future, potentially we could start a special class either here in Garrison or potentially even at Haldane, and work together, and it would be more cost-effective, and but more importantly, we can educate our children here close to home. So that's very exciting as well, and I will keep you posted on that. Secondly, some real good work got done over the February break. The staff was off, the students were off. Joe did a great job planning, and Mike Onito, our lead custodian, was here on site. Joe, can you just give the board and the public a brief update on what we accomplished?
Yes. So essentially, we had a number of items that got completed over the holiday break. So essentially, we had a lot of doors that got replaced. And what you will notice when you look at the front of the building, we have the vestibule. There was some issues with the vestibule before as far as the fitment of all the aluminum and the layout of that. And now that has all been, that part has been fixed. There's still some items as far as glass and locks that have to be put in place in order for us to start using the vestibule, but it's much closer. And we have all of the classroom doors that we were waiting for a long time did arrive before the break, and they were installed over the break. So there was significant progress made on the capital project, and what I would say is the general contractor, the plumbing contractor, and the electric contractor has primarily punch list items left. So we're making good progress, but there are still a number of items that need to be done.
That's it? All right. Do we have any questions for Carl or Joe?
I guess one good question, I guess maybe it's kind of capital project-y, is are we waiting for different weather for the front steps to be fixed?
That's most likely going to be a summer project because what we had there, we had a temporary repair that using the salt actually did a chemical reaction on the repair, and it made it all fall off. So we're not going to work on that until the summertime.
And that was outside the scope of the capital project.
Yeah.
That was a repair we did, correct?
Yep.
Any other questions for Carl or Joe? Can't just shout out if I don't see you. Okay. Okay. Great. Then we're going to go ahead and move on to the presentation and approval of our new Spanish textbook series. Mr. Yap, the podium is yours.
Thank you. So just in the last couple months, we started looking at a new textbook for world language for our Spanish program. And of course, I relied on my previous experience and was leaning one way. And then Alessandra, who is our new Spanish teacher, put us on track with Senderos, which is the Spanish version. And it's a great textbook in many different ways, and I'm going to take you through the whole presentation. The main thing that I'll say, and I'll probably say this more than once, is the ACFL standards are what New York State has adopted. Instead of coming up with their own, which they always had until about 3 or 4 years ago, they adopted the national standards for world language, and that's what the ACFL standards are. So we were then able to get a higher quality book because it was not New York State specific. It is aligned with the Apple exam, which is an exam that a lot of districts have moved to, which is a national exam that can be used for checkpoint A, which is taken in 8th grade, and then checkpoint B, which is taken in Spanish, usually after your 3rd year of the language, or 4th if you have it in middle school. And then it's also used for checkpoint C, which is more normally known as the biliteracy seal. So it's very well-known exam. It has many different levels to it. It has like for just novice, which is the lowest level, it has a low, intermediate, a low, a medium, and a high. So each level has 3 levels within it. This textbook aligns very well with both the Apple exam and the ACFL standards, so before I go into it. This is what the textbooks look like. I'm going to spend a lot of time on the digital because the textbook is just a regular textbook, but I'll touch on it briefly. The electronic piece is where this series really shines for, just because it's very modern, very tech-driven, and they can really, the students can learn at their own pace, and teachers can kind of modify it to really make sure that, like, if a class is having a problem with the concept, they can even add in more practice, or if they're speeding through it and they seem like they understand it, teacher can take some away. This is just there's different levels of their site that you can purchase, and we bought a 6-year agreement that is the super site. There's the super site, there's Prime, and then there's just the regular site. So in this, there's the student edition, so even if they forget, or they need to look at their textbook, they can look at it online. They don't have to take the textbook back and forth. It has a ton of text, video, and audio that has an AI component running in the background, which we'll go over as well. And it's mobile friendly, so they can even use it on their phone. Not that we really want them to, but it can. So more if they're on the go, if they're at practice or whatever else, and they're trying to do something, they can do it that way. This is just the overall Vista platform. This is kind of how their motto or their values: engage, connect, support, empower. And this is the instructional design that they follow. They try and make it personal, put it in their own words. They try and make it fun by adding in that media culture perspective. They still focus on the grammar, and then they bring it all together. And I'll take you through how they do that. So in the latest version, they added a lot to it, which is the version that we do, that we have. The fotonovela, it's basically a soap opera for teenagers, and they film their own. They have their own TV studio, and they film their own. They film it on site in different Spanish-speaking countries, so they have all that. Can-do goals is something that is very, almost required in world language right now. Instead of, if you're a teacher in the past, it was always SWBAT, students will be able to. Now they have these I can goals, so the students take ownership of their own learning. And so I can do this, I can do that. They updated a lot of the TV clips, videos, that kind of thing, the music, and they built in that AI component that I was talking about before. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the textbook, but just to show you one page of what a textbook looks like, you can see it's extremely colorful. There's a lot of practice, a lot of words, and just gives you a general idea of some of the different activities that they could be doing within the textbook and workbook. So that's just a quick one that I'll just throw it up. I just wanted you to see one page out of a textbook. There's a lot of specialization within the technology. So the animated grammar tutorials are kind of like Apicello, if you're familiar with that. It's a YouTube video that's covering a grammar topic, but there are different points that they have to stop, answer a question, and then continue on and maybe answer 2 or 3 more questions, and then always answer a question at the end. So it's not, hey, I watched the video and that's it. Like, they have to actually answer questions so that it's broken down into smaller chunks. In the bottom left-hand corner, the prime speech diagnostics, Alessandra will be able to see how each student is performing down to the individual verbs, the individual concepts, and show them the strengths and weaknesses of every single child. There's different readings that can be done. There's interactive maps. Here's an example of the photo novela. They have not only the students will be speaking, but Alessandra, depending on the class and depending on how much she thinks they understand the vocabulary, she can turn on or off the captioning. She can then turn it to just English if it's maybe a 6th grade class, and then turn it to Spanish for a 7th and 8th grade class. So she has a lot of different decision making that she can make depending on the class, and the very next class it can be different. You're not locked in at any point. She can change it, and it could be almost like a close read, where the first time they're going through it, she's going to give it to them in English. Next time, she would give it to them in Spanish. So she can differentiate all those. Just to show you like one quick little thing is in the top left-hand corner, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's a little blue box there, and then it has a number right after it. That relates to the actual textbook page, and they can actually click on it, and it'll take them to the actual textbook page. So if they're like, well, what is this video about, and why are we watching it? They can just click it and kind of review the vocabulary, stop the video for a little while, review the vocabulary, review the concepts, and then go back to the video. You never realize how loud that fan is until it turns off. There's a section called En Pantalla, and it has different video clips in it that are modern day clips. So different commercials, different video clips that are from Spanish-speaking countries. So it's very, engaging for the students. It's not something that is, 20, 30, 40 years old that they have in the textbook. It's really up to date. And that's one of the great things about the technologies. They can continually update. We signed a 6-year contract, but throughout those 6 years, they'll be adding more and more content and changing it and really making it as up to date as possible. This piece, they have the different short videos of the cultures and customs of Spanish-speaking countries. Depending on the level, some of it's in English, some of it's in Spanish, just depending on the level. But it goes into the cultural and customs of different Spanish-speaking countries. Flash Cultura is actual interviews with different people. Again, it really emphasizes the speaking and the listening component. The news broadcasters are young people around the student's age, and they're interviewing about common events. This is from FC Barcelona game, which is a soccer team in Barcelona. This is what the student will first look like. This is what it looks very similar to Google Classroom. We can post in both areas. But this is what the front face will be before they actually pick an actual lesson. This is the first thing that they'll see. You can see that it's very self-paced, and it shows them exactly what they need to accomplish by those little squares, and it shows them where they are. Again, Alessandra can change the amount of practice. So one time, again, if she thinks they're doing extremely well, it could be 1 practice activity. And the next time it could be 3 because she thinks it's a really dense topic and she wants more explanation and that kind of thing. So it has a lot more, you can constantly change it. And that's also the beauty of the technology, is that you're not have to go page by page. These are activities that are outside of the textbook that just allow for that reinforcement. This is just another look at it. You can see again the bar up top to show the students where they are, and then it shows you can see the blue square toward the middle of the screen that shows you the page that the student is on, that they can go to the textbook, and then it gives them the actual activity that is there. Again, this is what I was talking about before. I just blew it up a little bit more. You can have Spanish or English transcripts. They can request help from Alessandra right through here, and it will kind of bookmark. So instead of saying, hey, I just don't understand something on page 21, it will actually show Alessandra exactly where they're having the problem, and they can write notes in there and say, hey, I don't understand this specific question. So it gets very specific, which then allows her to not just give away the answer, she can actually help them through that specific question. So it gets really into the granularity of it. This is another thing that Alessandra can control. There can be partner chat, so she could open it up just during school hours, close it after school hours, and it's all recorded. So that she can turn on and off the recording and listen to it at another time, and turn it on and off. So just another way of listening to the different, and you can see that they're given the dialogue there. In some of the upper levels, they're just given a topic and then they have to discuss that topic. In the lower levels, which is most of the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they're actually given a dialogue and they have to, they're working on the pronunciation and inflection so that it's appropriate. It does have voice recognition, so like on the right-hand side, it's going over, it will recognize if you say a certain word the right way or wrong way. So on the right side, you see like a family chart and it has abuelos at the top. And if you don't say it correctly, it's not going to give you credit, and I'll send you back and give you the answer and then see if you can say it the right way, that kind of thing. So it's constantly monitoring and is smart enough so that you can actually speak back to the computer, and it'll tell you if your pronunciation and if you have the right vocabulary term. So it's that smart. This is really something very, very important, especially this year we're going to be giving the FLAX exam. Next year we're thinking of giving the Apple exam. This part of the exam is exactly the same as the Apple exam. This might sound weird, but what they have is they have a person on the screen, just like what's grayed out right there, and the person will ask one question, and then it's starting to record in the background. And it's kind of freaky the first time you go through it, because as you're speaking, as long as you're speaking, it'll nod its head like it knows what you're saying. It has no clue what you're saying, but it nods its head. So, and that's what they do on the Apple exam, is it's trying to show you have to go through a dialogue, and it's just giving you that feedback by just shaking its head and saying, yes, just keep going, that kind of thing. And so that's exactly what they do on the Apple exam. So it's great practice for them, and they can do it multiple times on different subject areas throughout the actual Senderos 1A and Senderos 1B. They'll have this experience several times. So when they get to the Apple, they won't be as freaked out as the first time that I've seen a lot of students that go through this. There's a lot of different assessment opportunities. There's a teacher can create, they can make custom assessments, they could create guided notes, they can do individualized grading and do different comments like, hey, I think you need more practice in this area. So it's not only the assessments that come with the system, that Alessandra will have access to different clip art, different topics where she can make her own tests if she thinks that there needs to be more questions on a certain topic, or she can just create a test from scratch. So all that can be done within the system. That's about it, which is a lot, but just to give you a quick rundown of everything that's in there. So it's extremely comprehensive, And really, I think the main thing that I can't stress enough is that it has that speaking, listening, reading, writing. It covers all 4 dimensions of world language so that you're not just doing drill and kill and vocabulary. Do you have anything to share?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to the board meeting today. It is such a pleasure to meet all of you. My name is Alessandra Enderle. I'm the new Spanish teacher. And one thing when I brought up this program to Allison, I was on the phone with her. I was working another job. I was working a leave replacement as an Italian substitute. And I told her about it. She said, give me 1 sec. I'm going to look into it. Next day, I get an email saying, I love it. We're ordering it. This is great. And she was so excited because I was also telling her that this program, VHL, which is VHL Central, that's the site that has the Senderos, and they have a bunch of other textbooks. They have this site and these textbooks, and the kids I was using, we were using the Italian textbook, and they absolutely loved it. I saw the differentiation firsthand, how they had speaking, they had the videos, the kids were engaged with it. If I gave them worksheets, they said, can we do it online? And we see that this is online. Can we do it here? And the fact that the kids wanted to do it inspired me because these kids were taking it for themselves. And I wanted to bring that to this school because I heard how much the kids are such driven kids and how much they want to drive themselves and how much they want to push themselves because I know that they can. And we all know that they can. And that's just what made it kismet, basically, that it all fell into place. And I really hope that the kids love it. I introduce it to them tomorrow. So fingers crossed that they like it. It seems like they will. So that's pretty much that. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. So appreciate the presentation. And now I want to just turn to questions. Direct them mostly to you, Mr. Yap. I don't want to put our new teacher on the spot here, but do I have any questions to start? We're going to go David. Ken, did you have your hand raised too? No? Courtney? No. Go ahead, David.
Well, a couple of things. One is that...
Speak into your mic. Grab your microphone. Speak right in there.
A couple of things. First of all, this really strikes me as being light years ahead of where we've been on Spanish instruction. I mean, really impressive stuff. And does it imply, first question, does it imply a different expectation for what the kids can accomplish than we've had before? I mean, that's question number one.
With the adoption of the ACTFL standards and also the adoption of the biliteracy seal at the upper levels, it really raised the bar in New York State. And the ACTFL standards are not only standards, they're expectations for teachers and students. So the expectation for a teacher is to stay in the Spanish, in the target language, 80% of the time. So to answer your question, very much so, yes.
So I guess the second thing, which is related, I guess, is that, from what I've seen, including 2 kids here at Garrison School, the motivation to learn the language is very low. Mm-hmm. I have seen very few kids, if any, who have said, one of the things I really want to accomplish at the Garrison School is to learn Spanish, which is very sad and really a kind of a tragedy and kind of a waste, actually. Now, I can see how this program might be a part of the answer because it looks like fun and it looks like motivating. But is there anything else, James, that or Alexandra, that you have in mind? How do you? They live in a community that's mostly white, mostly almost entire. Well, they don't run into much interaction with kids who speak Spanish. So, what are your thoughts about how do you increase motivation on the part of students to learn the language?
I'll answer and then I'll turn it over to Alessandra. I think that there's such high motivation with this series because it's so up to date and it's meeting the students where they are on topics that they're interested in. That, most of these students, if you say FC Barcelona, they know, if you say Real Madrid, they know those teams inside, and they want to listen to that interview and understand it. And so if you're motivating the students in content that they're interested in, then they'll want to learn it that much more.
So one thing that any language teacher always wants their kids to be is a global citizen. So we want our kids to know that the world exists outside of their school, that there is more to the world, that yes, just in this community, not that many people speak Spanish, but you go outside, you go to the bottom of Westchester, if you're in Tarrytown, you're in Sleepy Hollow, which I just came from, it's a huge Spanish-speaking population. And those kids were also very motivated, but also I know the kids here. And just being with them for the past 2 days, I've seen, yes, there's kids who are some slackers, but I've seen the kids, I will admit, I'm not going to sugarcoat. We all know that there's some kids who are a little bit of a slacker, but I'm here and we're all here to make sure that they push themselves because we're here. We're their champions. We're their cheerleaders. We want to make sure that our kids are doing well, that they actually enjoy what they're doing, and just making them aware of the world around them and how to be a good part of the world around them I believe is going to make them more aware and become those global citizens, which is what we want them to do. And that's what I think is going to bring in their motivation. Yes, there might be some things that may need outside motivation. They might need to be extrinsically motivated, maybe, but hopefully they're intrinsically motivated that they actually want to do it themselves. It's not because we're promising a party at the end of the school year if they all get 80s on the exam or something or above that. But we all hope that they end up being internally motivated and wanting to become a part of the world around them. Did that answer the question?
Thank you. Courtney, you had questions as well?
Yeah, just a little, I guess, a little bit more specific, but I agree with what David said, that this, seems like such an exciting program. Obviously, what you're showing us is very web-based. I'm just curious what an average day in the classroom looks like, of how much they have less than an hour in class. Are they on their, and this is, I don't mean this in any judgment, I'm always trying to figure out what a
Right.
middle school day looks like. Are
Right.
the kids on the computer all the time?
No.
Are they interacting? How do you break it up? Is a lot of this homework? Is the,
Yeah. A lot of this
How
will
does it
be
get incorporated?
Yeah, a lot of this will be done at home. Some of it, of course, will be touched on, especially some of the listening. They can do some of that as a class, but in overall class, no matter whether it's Spanish or math or science, we want to see basically the same thing, which is whole, small, whole. So we want to, Alessandra, as well as all of our teachers, to start with an objective in mind and to present the overall lesson within a 10 to 15 minute time span to start off the lesson. And then to give the students time to practice, whether it's in pairs or in larger groups, and then come back at the end and make sure that they're understanding. When they're in smaller groups, that's a chance for Alessandra to walk around, to hear the Spanish, to have them speak. The exam, whether it's the flax or the apple, but especially the apple, the majority of the points are in the speaking and the listening. And so they have to have that experience. This is, New York, we can say what we want about the Department of Education, and I'm first in line, trust me. But they have done a good job at updating the standards to reflect the current world around us and have really made it as applicable as possible. And I would definitely say that they have reached that. In some areas, I don't think that they're totally there. In world language, I think that they hit the mark because they did adopt the national standards.
Thanks. Anyone else with questions? I have one question, and this really pertains to, clearly we're coming into this mid-year, which is unusual. in terms of our eighth graders and ensuring that they're prepared for checkpoint A, are there assessments in place with this to see where they're at and make sure we can get them to where they need to be for the end of year checkpoint A exam?
Yeah, I'll answer, and then I'll let Alessandra answer as well. I think there are multiple chances for different assessments, both formal and informal, both online as well as on paper.
So with the online platform, there are already pre-made tests and quizzes that align with everything that the students are learning. So it goes with each lesson that they're doing. If I wanted to do a quick quiz to see how they're doing, I can also assign homeworks or anything. Also workbook activities. We are ordering physical workbooks because I do believe that we need some differentiation in materials. As I know that there are some kids who like having a physical book in their hand and they like taking it home with them because they might come up with the excuse that their laptop died, they couldn't find their charger, something like that. So they can't use that excuse if they have the physical workbook. But there's always chances for me to test them or just to assess them informally and formally. So there are speaking opportunities. There's the listening opportunities. There's vocab practice for them to do. There is a bunch of little check-ins that I can do. There's also a quick activity on there that takes them maybe 5 minutes. That also shows me if they grasp the concept that we just did. So then that's what I know. And if I know that half of them were struggling with it, great. I can maybe go a little bit more in depth with those kids and maybe move the other ones on a little bit so they can start the next part of the lesson. So it definitely gives me control of what they're learning, but also they have their own control as well.
Just follow up on one thing.
Yes.
Alessandra, how would you define specifically the expectations that you have of eighth grade graduates from the school with respect to Spanish? What do you expect them to have?
I would like them to be at novice medium, which means that they're able to carry a conversation, a simple conversation in Spanish, as that's one of the speaking points is that they have to have at least 4 or 5 different interactions with me during their speaking portion. And I would like them to have that and to go above and beyond and actually create an original sentence and not just spit back a response that I tell them. So that's what I want for their speaking. For their listening, I would like them to be able to pick up on context clues and vocab words that they hear from the listening portion. With reading, main thing that I want them to pick up on is context clues, because in a different language, they're not going to know every word. I fully understand that they will not know every single word, but I want them to pick up on what they know, the use of cognates, what they see that they know, and picking up on that so then they're able to understand the main idea of the passage that they're reading. And for writing, it is their 3rd year doing it. I would hope that they're able to draft a paragraph of original ideas and not, again, spit back out random, sentences that I've told them throughout the school year, but them being able to come up with their own original paragraph based on a topic that I give.
Welcome to Garrison. We are really delighted that you're here.
Thank you.
All right. Do you have any further questions from the board? We're good? Good on the screen? All right, I think we're good. I'm not going to forget, Dusty, we do have here the official adoption of this curriculum. I promised Dusty I would remember this. And thank you, Mrs. Enderle, for joining us. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, does hereby approve the following textbooks for Spanish instruction, Senderos Level 1A and 1B for grades 6 through 8 Spanish classes, approved by the National Instructional Materials Access Center. May I have a motion, please? Seconded. Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays? We got it. Nays? Abstentions. Okay. Great. We're now going to move on to the 2022-2024 budget presentation. I'm going to go ahead and invite Carl and Joe to jump in with us.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I will begin our annual budget presentation. I will talk about some of the goals and what we are trying to accomplish with our budget proposal. And then for the financials, I will turn it over to my colleague, Joe Jimick, and he will get into those details. Before I begin, I will say this is the first of several budget presentations. At the end of the presentation, we have those exact dates for future presentations. For those who care to follow this process all the way through, we also have that information posted on our website right now. There's a complete budget calendar. But basically, it's important to know that the budget right now is in draft form. These are only recommendations made. We worked with our board finance committee, which we have 3 board members, Sarah, Kent, and Madeline. And Joe and I have met with them over the past 6 weeks or so to develop this budget. Now we're proposing it to the entire board and also rolling it out for the community. And we appreciate any and all feedback, and we mean that sincerely. There'll be 3 board presentations before the April budget adoption. Once it's adopted, it cannot be changed. Then it'll go out for a public vote in May. We'll also have a few opportunities for informal. We also have a Saturday, and again, you'll see those dates later. We have a Saturday session for people who may not want to engage at a formal board meeting like this, but would be more comfortable coming in on a Saturday. We're going to provide a building tour, and then, of course, talk to people in a less formal manner. There'll be some opportunity for dialogue, and again, we appreciate all feedback. Now to the presentation. We'll start with our budget objectives. The very first bullet is stay within the allowable tax levy. That is something that, considering last year, we did ask our community for an override, a 6.6% override. We felt very strongly that this year we would do everything possible to stay within the allowable tax levy and avoid an override. Also, we want to provide a transparent process. I think I more or less just outlined that. Input from the Finance Committee as well as our community stakeholders. 2 more objectives: maintain budget lines based on actual spending and aligned with projections. Our lines in the budget that we're presenting this evening and the last 2 years of budgets, the lines have been closely analyzed and there isn't a lot of contingency. So for example, just one example is high school tuition. We have to project. We don't know exactly how many students will attend one of our 3 high schools next year. Some may opt for an independent or private school. But we do our best to have projections to understand exactly how many students are going to be there. We may have 1 or 2 extra high school placements built into the budget in case a family moves in, but no more than that. In past years, there maybe were 8 or 10. There isn't that kind of contingency. They're very close budget lines. And the 4th objective is to maintain staffing levels and programs that support the district's goals and initiatives. You may recall we worked very hard on a strategic coherence plan a couple of years back. We set some clear goals for Garrison. Spanish program is just one great example of enhancing and improving the quality of education here in Garrison. We have many other initiatives. I'll speak to just a few of them in a moment. But, although we've had some budget challenges, we definitely want to maintain a high level of quality programming. So this is the strategic planning process that I spoke about. The vision of the graduate is something that you've seen before, so I won't spend too much time on that. But just as a reminder, also, these are our main goals for the upcoming school year and beyond. Some initiatives that align with our strategic coherence plan. One thing we are pursuing, and Mr. Yap is taking the lead with this, and in his last district, he was very successful with this initiative. It's the U.S. Department of Education Green Ribbon Award. There are basically 3 pillars to qualify for this award. It's a very prestigious award. One is reducing your environmental impact. Those are things like our capital project, getting off fossil fuel, moving to cleaner energy, lighting that we changed. A lot of the capital project really helped us work towards that first pillar. The second one is health and wellness. We have a middle school health program, but we also teach health, starting at a very early age, and wellness with phys ed and other subject areas. We are teaching that. And environmental education, we've made a big investment in environmental education. One of the first things I heard about when I arrived in Garrison was we want to leverage our natural resource of the school forest. And the community, I believe, felt that we weren't doing enough. I know there were some great things done in the past. I'm not criticizing, but I know they wanted to do more. And that is when we arrived at hiring a person dedicated to science and environmental education, Miss Rachel Arbor, and she's doing some great work in that area. Another initiative that the budget will support is a partnership with Desmond Fish Public Library. This is not a big cost driver, but we really value Desmond Fish and our relationship with them. We started to speak with them last year. Another area that Mr. Yap took the lead in reaching out and coordinating with them. The space that we're in has just recently received some new bookshelves. We had a collection that we were struggling a bit to fill out the bookshelves and come up with a system where children can access books in this space. We have some high-tech media and computer technology here, but we also want our children to continue to read books and have books in their hands. So this partnership is going to enable us to do that. Desmond Fish will actually bring rotating collections of books, and our students will be able to check out those books right from this space. So it'll be a nominal cost, maybe for an assistant librarian from Desmond Fish to help us set that up, but we expect to launch that next year. The Seal of Civic Readiness, again, Mr. Yap, I got to give him a lot of credit. He's been working very hard. This is an 8th grade initiative. It's something very exciting that we believe our students will benefit from. And Ms. Valvano, of course, is really the driving force behind that initiative as well. Also, I think we've done a great job in the past of adding exciting and engaging elective courses and quarterly courses. Art, debate, STEAM, theater, band, chorus, and e-music are all courses that our middle school students can access. And I think that's a very solid selection of various courses and different interests for our middle school students. We also have band and chorus in grades 3 and 5, which this budget will support. The Yale Ruler Program, which is our SEL program. We do have a new psychologist coming on board. You'll meet him later in the meeting. And that program, there'll be some training involved and ongoing instruction with Yale Ruler. DBT is another program that our counselors are trained in, and many of our teachers as well. We've had a lot of success with DBT, supporting not only special education students, but gen ed students. There is money to support that. And DEI, we have a number of initiatives that we are pursuing as a district and even as a community. We're partnering with neighboring districts and our libraries. There is money to support continued DEI work. And lastly, technology infrastructure maintenance. I won't get into too much detail. Joe will talk a little bit more about this later in the presentation. But we've done some major upgrades with this capital project. They include new locking systems and camera systems and phone systems and HVAC systems. All of that is dependent on our technology infrastructure. So we have to make sure that is maintained and solid so we don't go offline and have to potentially close school. So that there is money in the budget to support and make sure that is where it needs to be. Now, just to go to class sizes, on the left-hand side of the screen, you will see actual class sizes. I took those numbers just on Monday. I updated, I think, 1 or 2. So these are accurate numbers. And then on the right-hand side is what we project for next year. Of course, that can change. Now, pre-K is a little bit hard to predict. We did a survey. Right now, we're projecting 15 students for pre-K, and we're very pleased with that number. It's possible that parents have a change of heart and decide to use, one of our other quality pre-K programs in the area. But again, we are thinking 15, but they're not officially registered, so that number may change in the upcoming presentations. Kindergarten, I think we have a better grasp on because currently we have students in kindergarten, and we do expect all of them to move up. There are 12 pre-K students, And we have also already some new registrations for kindergarten. So we are projecting 19, could be give or take one or two, but we do think we're okay with one section of kindergarten. First grade, we do believe we need two sections. 32 students, 16 in each class. 32 is too large for a primary grade in our judgment, so we are maintaining two sections for first grade next year. Second grade, it'll be one section of 20. Intermediate grade levels, we have 25 students we're projecting for grade 3, 19 for grade 4, and 21 for grade 5. At the middle school level, you see a section in 6th grade of 21, in 7th grade 26, and in 8th grade 24. I will just point out that in 7th and 8th grade, we do run an accelerated math program. So in math only, there will be two sections of 7th and two sections of 8th. On the bottom of the screen, you will see that total sections have not changed year over year. This year we have 11 total sections, meaning from pre-K right up through 8th grade, and basically it's the same next year. Moving on to high school, we have our enrollment projections. Currently, you see that we're at 84 students in 2 high schools. Next year they have a choice of 3 different high schools. We expect to only go up to 85. But you do see as we move ahead to 24, 25 and beyond, you do see the numbers increasing. Past trends, I'm told that in Garrison, there was a time where potentially 20, 25% of the 8th grade class attended independent or private schools. The trend that we've been seeing for the past several years is maybe 2 or 3 students at most. So most of our 8th graders do attend our public high schools. So we do have some headwinds there financially, and I think it's just important to keep that in mind. And we don't really get any relief as far as numbers in high school until 26, 27, and beyond. Staffing changes, we expect to maintain all the same levels of staffing. However, due to scheduling efficiencies and reducing some sections, we do believe we can reduce one faculty staff by 0.4, or that's 40%. To explain more about that, particularly it's our art teaching position. What we believe we can do is combine all the sections that we combined last year and into this year even. We combined some sections. We can offer the same level of art. Elementary school gets art twice a cycle. Middle school gets it on a quarterly basis, all students. We can offer that same level of art, but with a 0.6 teacher or a 60% art teacher. And there is some savings realized by doing this. Also, we plan to eliminate, we have a part-time CSE, CPSE chairperson who has been with the district for quite some time and has served us well. But we are hiring a new psychologist being recommended to the board this evening who has experience with 504 and CSE chairing experience and a lot of other extensive experience. I'll get into that later. But we do think that person can handle chairing our meetings. There will be some additional support in place as we settle into a new model. But in doing the analysis of the needs and the numbers of meetings and students with IEPs, we do think this is achievable. Now the expenses. For this, I'm going to turn it over to Joe.
Thank you, Carl. So one of the things that's a challenge for this district and many others is you do have a number of things that are increasing at a rate above what you can necessarily raise money through your tax levy. Some of these are things that are planned for, and some are not. So one of the things that we have to talk about is debt service. So this capital project is just being completed, or we're trying to get it completed shortly. You typically convert to long-term bonds after a project is completed, but based upon advice from our fiscal counsel, we converted to bonds earlier. And that was good because our net interest cost for those bonds is 3.2%. And what we're seeing in the marketplace now for bonds of similar size and scope is more like 4.5. So we did lock in some good interest rates, but with that comes the actual payments for principal and interest, and they will stay at this level for the majority of the life of the bond. We do have another health insurance rate increase. Last year's health insurance rate was increase was 8%. There's another 5.5% on top of the 8% from last year. And if you look at it on a same basis, that would be $75,000 for that. And then we have electric costs for the HVAC system is an additional $69,000. And there's two items in place with that. So one, as you are aware, if you're paying your electric bills, or if you're actually no one around here is paying for natural gas, I don't think, but electric prices are very much related to natural gas prices. The cost per kilowatt went from, there was an agreement through the consortium or through the municipal power purchase agreement that was 6.5 cents or thereabouts, and that obviously that went out, and now we went to market for one, and then so we've recently locked in a new rate, but it's basically twice that level of what it was originally. And then when you remodel a school, you get to the current requirements for the amount of fresh air, and because we're heating and cooling so much more fresh air, you use more energy. So those two things together, we're estimating is a $69,000 increase. And then we have transportation is increased by the CPI, and right now we're estimating that at an 8% increase. And so those items together are $325,000 already. If you take a look at transportation, that's the trend for transportation. And then we talked a little bit about technology equipment. So the technology equipment, the first thing you think of is computers and the internet and those sorts of things. But we have a number of items which are health and safety items that are now all computerized. The HVAC system is fully computerized and runs through the network. The door locks, the telephones, the PA system, and all of those things which are important for health and safety run through the network system. And we have a number of devices, network devices, that are a part of the system that are point-to-point or daisy chain wired together, and they're also beyond their useful life. So if they do break, they're not under any kind of a service contract that would get it back up in a short order. And the point-to-point wiring that we're talking about is the easiest example that I can give for people. When you buy Christmas lights and one of the lights goes bad, the whole string goes bad. Well, that's the way our network is wired up currently. So in the budget is infrastructure to do wiring as well as replace devices that are at the end of their life. So this is one of the things that we have to talk about because it is related to our tax cap, in that the tax cap formula is 2% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less. And as you know from paying your bills at home, inflation is a problem, and it's obviously a problem for us as well. So now let's take a look at the revenue. So Garrison, once again, is being held to the minimum foundation aid increase. So most of your neighbors in other school districts have significant increases in aid coming, and it's the second year in a row where there's significant increases in aid. On average, it's 23% increases in foundation aid. Garrison is basically projected to be at a hold harmless amount of 3%. And so that's not going to make a significant increase in the amount of revenue that's available to us. And when you just want to take a look at it in numbers, these are annual increases. So annual increases in perpetuity for the future. That's how much additional aid came to those districts in the county this year, and that will continue, year over year. And then next year, or the year that's upcoming, is an additional amount that is coming to all these school districts. And when you look at it in terms of the 2 years together, you can really see that most districts got significant increases in aid, which will continue into the future, and Garrison did not. And you might say, well, maybe that's not fair, or why is that? Okay, it has the foundation aid formula is due to a number of items. Let me go back. Oops. All right. So the items that play a key part in the foundation aid formula is property wealth, income wealth, and the relative need of the student. So that has to do with the amount of students that are English as a new language, the amount of students that are below the poverty line, and the amount of students that have high special education needs. In Garrison, we do not have many of those populations. We do have the average gross income is high here. The property values are high here. The need is low in terms of special education as well as English as new language. And poverty is low. So that translates into less foundation aid. But what we want to also take a look at is tax rate. And what this is that we see here is in Putnam County, obviously, it's broken up into towns and villages that are the taxing jurisdictions in each school district. And they're ranked in order on this slide and the next one. So as you can see at the top there, Brewster, per full value of a property, they pay $26 per thousand of full value. Okay, so if the way you think about full value is you get rid of all the changes that are due to equalization, and you take the assessment and you have the full or estimated market value that's a part of that assessment. That is what the numbers are all based on in this chart. So, and then the last column there is the multiple of Garrison. So if you live in the town of Carmel and you're in the Brewster School District, you pay $2.73 for every dollar, every thousand, 2 times more, 2.7 times more than what someone in Garrison would pay for the value of the same house. So, and then if you look at the next slide here, so it breaks it all the way down, and then Garrison, even after the override, is still way at the bottom as far as the amount of taxes that are collected. So the median is 2.32 times what a Garrison taxpayer would pay, and the average is 2.26 times. and they're still the lowest, lowest by far, and it includes the override last year. And then if you look at it in a larger region, the median in Dutchess, Putnam, Orange, Rockland, and Westchester, so you look at all those counties together, Garrison, everyone else pays 2.13 times as much as Garrison does. And there's 88 school districts that have jurisdiction in these 5 counties. And Garrison is ranked 87th out of 88th. And the only district that has a lower tax rate is Pecanico Hills, which has high adjusted gross income, high property wealth, and low needs as well. So, there is revenue challenges, and that is definitely something that is difficult. We think that because the governor has committed to fully funding foundation aid, we don't think that there's going to be any significant changes to aid or any significant additional aid that's going to come to Garrison. And we don't think that there's going to be any changes to the tax cap formula in the near future. But we have made formal requests for special aid to Assemblywoman Levenberg and Senator Rollison. We have met them in person, in some cases multiple times, to kind of plead our case for additional help, because obviously we understand that revenue is a challenge, but we still have the same increasing costs that everyone has. So here's a look at the proposed budget. So first, we'll start with the tax levy. So the main items that are of interest there is the allowable growth factor is 2% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less. So obviously, allowable growth factor is 2%. And then the only other change there is the prior year capital exclusion and the coming year capital exclusion. And the difference between those two items, there's just one, it's basically a couple of items, is you have a increase in the amount of debt service, and we're also recommending a use of $45,000 of the capital reserve to support the installation of electric water heaters in the school that would replace ones that are fired by oil. We have a grant, a state grant that we received this year for $90,000 to use for any capital purpose within the school, and we've elected to use it for the installation of these water heaters, but there is a district or local contribution that's required, and we're recommending that the board use the capital reserve to fund the district's contribution. But you account for that in the capital exclusion. So what we're looking at is the maximum allowable increase under the cap is $341,000 or 3.29%. Then we're going to take a look at the revenue, and I want to point out the items there in green is the state aid. So the state aid projected for the budget was on top in the larger rectangle there, and the estimated was $916,000, and the actual amount was $925,000. So when Carl talked earlier about that the revenues and expenditures were budgeting close to actual, that's the kind of closeness that we're talking about. We're, it's within a few $1,000s of what it actually ended up being. And then if you take a look at the last item on there, it says A5031 interfund transfers. That is the amount that's used for fund balance, and we're projecting to use $662,000 of fund balance for next year. But we don't have $662,000 of fund balance, so where does that come from? and that comes from using the reserves. So we are, because there's definitely a desire to not impact program and to not ask for an override, the only way for us to do that is to significant use of reserves. So you have some items there that are listed as 22-23 use, and there's 3 items there, and the first one is to use 75,000 of the employee retirement contribution reserve to support the expenses in that the employer contributions to the retirement in that line. There's 28,000 to be used from the reserve for tax certs. So there was a recent settlement with the Highland Golf Course. So the district has to cut a check to the golf course for a refund on their taxes in the current year, and that's what that represents. And then there's 180,000 for the use of fund balance, and that is, the district received 180,000 of special aid this year, but it was not included in the estimate for revenue, so we're able to use that to support next year's budget. And then it would be to transfer 22-23, it would be to transfer 225,000 from the teacher's retirement reserve, from teacher's retirement, actually from the employee retirement to the teacher's retirement reserve, and to use those monies to support next year's expenses for teachers and employee retirement. 45,000 for the capital reserve to support the installation of the water heaters gets you to the 662,000. That reduces our reserves and fund balance from 2 million to 1.4 million. Which obviously is not desirable, and it's not good for the long-term health of the school district, but we don't see a choice otherwise without impacting program. So if we take a look at the proposed budget is 12.6 million for an increase of 548,000 or 4.53%. So that represents a gap between the revenues and expenses of 222,000. So then we have some tough decisions to make. So we do need to allocate 662,000 of reserves on fund balance in order to stay within the cap and avoid cuts to program. So all the things that we're talking about as far as adjustments do not affect any instructional program within the school. So the reduction of the art staffing doesn't decrease the amount of art instruction that takes place. And the other changes don't make any impact to the instructional program within the school. So the use of 662,000 in reserves leaves 1.4 million. And then that leaves 900,000 of that reserves is restricted and can only be used for capital expense and debt service. And because of the way the tax cap calculation works, the district can't really access those funds without reducing the amount of revenue that's collected. Because the use of the capital reserve or the debt service reserve actually reduces the capital exclusion by however much you use. So it's not a way to close the budget gap. It would reduce the tax burden, but it wouldn't do anything to close the gap. So that remains that only 558,000 would be left, and it wouldn't support the development of a 24-25 budget without cuts to academic program, an override, or a combination of both. So these are the items that we're looking at in order to close the gap. So reduce the art teacher position by 0.4. Eliminate one 66-passenger bus run. And eliminate the part-time CSE, CPSE chairperson position. That those duties would be absorbed by the new psychologist. So this is one of the things that we're talking about is as far as transportation. We would eliminate one of the four large bus routes. And we are looking at optimizing the school bus routes to maintain our level of K-12 transportation. And that is kind of an iterative process. We need a bunch of information that we don't necessarily have yet as far as all of the student choices as far as tech, any private and parochial runs, any special education changes and placements. All those things contribute to what we can do with our existing transportation runs that we have in the budget. We are going to make every effort to be able to provide the same level of transportation that we currently provide with 3 large buses instead of 4, but we don't know for certain if that is going to work. We're optimistic that it will, but it would or could result in longer bus rides or the elimination of transportation of students that are within a 2-mile radius of the school. So that is something that over the next few months we are going to be looking at electronically projecting the routes and the times and all these things to see if everything will work. But at this point, we don't know for certain if it's going to work, but we're going to budget based upon 3 large bus runs instead of 4. So as far as recommendations, we're recommending that the district should seek a 3.3% increase to preserve the program. But what would happen if the budget is defeated on May 16th? The board could choose to do a revote for the budget, and they could use the same budget or a different one, as we did last year. Or the board could prepare and adopt a contingent budget without going back to the voters. A contingent budget requires a 0% tax increase. It increases the budget gap by $341,000. So an additional $341,000 of cuts over and above the $200,000 that we previously discussed would need to be removed from the budget. So here are some of the dates that are coming up. So we have another, our second presentation is on March 15th. And then we are going to have a presentation on a Saturday in case people aren't able to come to a regular board meeting. This is more of an informal one. We did a similar one last year in a snowstorm, I remember. Carl and I did that. Was a fun one. We don't anticipate there's going to be snow on the 25th, but we don't know. It could be. But we would do a tour of all the building improvements and the construction that's been done, as well as review the budget and answer questions in an informal way. And then we are planning a third budget presentation on the 29th. And then we have a adoption of the budget on Wednesday, April 12th. On April 20th, we're going to do a community budget presentation at the Desmond Fish Library, as well as I believe it's going to be simulcast electronically at the same time. And then you have voter registration on the 1st and the 2nd, and then on May 3rd is the public hearing on adopted budget. So obviously, the budget is adopted in April. The hearing that's on May 3rd is a requirement, but obviously, the budget's already adopted. No changes can be made after the April 17th date. And then we mail out the newsletter on May 5th, and then on May 16th is the vote. And are there any questions?
I just want to step in and thank you, Joe and Carl and Sarah and Madeline, also on the Finance Committee, for all the hard work that went into putting this together. You know, as the Finance Committee Chair, I'm really pleased at where we've come out this year. Obviously, we went through some very challenging situation last year in getting that budget adopted, and we've done a really good job, I think, of maintaining our expenses given our revenue challenges. And just the fact that this year we are going out, we're not asking the community for an override, and we are able to maintain our programming and our programs for our kids is really the outcome that we all wanted going into it. So thank you to everybody who's put this first draft budget together. We're really excited to get feedback from the community on some of the proposed things that we want to do, and looking forward to the next couple months here as we kind of hammer this process out. But definitely in a better place than we were last year, and really appreciate it to everyone who participated in getting this together.
Thank you, Kent. Before I open this, I should go ahead, I guess, and open it up to questions and discussion for the board. Does anybody have questions they want to kick it off with? Courtney?
I just have small, sort of specific ones. Does the pre-K get visit specials, whatever, art, music, etc.? Just curious. I know we haven't installed the water heaters yet, so that means we're not off oil entirely. So my question was, are we going to get any savings from no oil bill? I know our electric bill is going up.
I don't anticipate significant savings as far as oil, but what I do anticipate is a reliability improvement. And at some point, obviously, the district would want to remove the underground storage tank for oil. So the biggest concern from a facilities perspective is the operability of those two water heaters that have small oil usage attached to a 25,000-gallon tank that's mostly empty. So the problem with that is, you could have the fuel pick up water. You have to worry about leaks in an underground storage tank and all those sorts of things. And it's just something that, while we could probably get by for the next couple of years, it's not something that you would want to entertain long term. And if we're able to get rid of those combustion devices, then the areas where they are, there's more flexible use for them. Obviously, you wouldn't put a classroom where the old boilers were, but there's always a fight for storage and other things that we need space for.
Got it. Okay, so not only is there no savings for oil, we're actually looking at increased cost at some point down the line for the cost of removing them. But
Yes, yeah, so that's a capital project for a later date, yes.
got it. And last one in the technology aspect, the switches. Once we replace them, how long do they last?
I would leave that answer to James, but I'm thinking like 6 or 7 years under a annual agreement, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Is that fair?
Thanks.
All right, actually, I have a couple of questions, more clarifications. For anyone who didn't join us for the budget discussion last year, and as a reminder to everyone on the board, the reason we're talking about, when we look at transportation, eliminating transportation within 2 miles, it is the only legal elimination of transportation the board is able to make. We cannot eliminate requests for runs to private schools if they are made by a certain date. We have to do those, and all other transportation that comes in, including special education transportation. So that's why when we talk about eliminating the one bus, that's where we would go if we are not able to make it work with the 3 buses. I am confident that Joe, with his amazing computer program, will find a way. It may mean earlier pickup times, but I do think we can make this work to get kids to school with that. But I just want to make sure everyone understands why that's what we talk about, because by law, we have to take the rest of the kids. And then I want to go back to the slide you had that shows the increases and decreases year over year. And the one thing I wanted to point out was the negative there in the health insurance. It drives me crazy by going back that far. Health insurance costs are going up, but we do see a 3% change, a negative 3% change right there. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I think that's due to we have less employees using our insurance or taking the buyout option available to them in their various contracts.
Yes, so there's less employees using health insurance, less families versus individual. And the retirees, there were a number that went from a 2-person to a single plan in this current year. So we pay for retiree health care for the remainder of their lives of the retirees and the spouses. And there's some of them that passed this year. So.
And we've also increased the employee contribution in some of our contracts.
Yes.
So we have shifted the burden from the taxpayer to the employees of the school in many cases through our various contracts to help get that number down too as well.
Yes,
Correct?
it's a topic of current contract negotiations, and it was made, changes were made to the SRP contract that was ratified, as well as all the administrator contracts. And it puts it more in line with the region as far as contribution percentages.
And then just one other question, and I'll reach out to everybody else. I just want to clarify, the $28,000 on the tax certiorari claim is for the Highlands Golf Course on Route 90. I know there was a lot of talk last year about how the golf course that went to Shakespeare would impact our taxes. And I just wanted to clarify that these are separate golf courses we're talking about.
Yes, so there was a tax cert petition that was filed by the, I believe it's the current owners of the Highland Golf Course, to say that the market value of their golf course needed to go down by more than half, and then that obviously reduces their taxes by more than half. And that was approved by the courts, and so we do have to pay that shortly. And so that's what the use of the $28,000 of reserves is for.
Thank you. Those are just points I wanted to clarify before we moved on. Anyone want to jump in? Madeline?
A couple of questions, comments here. Thank you, Joe, for the presentation and all of the hard work. Of course, this is it's great news that we are staying within the cap. It's not great news looking at what the cuts that we have to make. So I have 2 in particular that I'm concerned about, and I would just like a little bit more information. One of it is the art teacher. I know that it's being reduced by 0.40 FTE, right? Art is very important to the district. It's the A in STEAM, and it's one FTE. How will the students not miss out on art? How is it not a reduction in the overall program for
Madeline,
our students?
You may recall during the pandemic, most of the school remained in 2 sections per grade level. Part of the reasoning behind that is we had to social distance. We had many classes of 11 or 12 students. it enabled us to stay open more than nearly any other school throughout the pandemic. So we maintained those two sections, but maintaining two sections is very costly in the way of staffing. You know, two sections means two teachers. One section, of course, one teacher. So over the past 2 years, with the budget challenges that we've had, we have slowly, and in many cases by attrition, but we've combined classes. I would say, and I would defend that our class sizes are still very desirable. You know, you look at the highest performing districts in our region, and numbers of 21 or 23, particularly at the intermediate and middle school levels, is very common, and in fact maybe a bit on the low side. But when we went to one section, well, now you need one less section of art. So the need for art teaching periods has reduced steadily over the past couple of years. However, the number of art sessions that our students get has remained the same. So we do two sessions per cycle for every child in pre-K through 5. And that's actually more than most schools. What's typical is one section for elementary students. So we do 2. And then at the middle school level, we have a quarterly art course. So it runs for 10 weeks, basically. And all of our middle school students receive art, each year, 6th grade, 6, 7, and 8. So basically, the need is not there for a full-time teacher because we have been combining sections over the past couple of years, if that makes sense.
So the students are getting the same level or of art
Absolutely.
classes?
Yes.
Okay. My other concern, I guess, is the transportation, right? It's all of our concerns. We're tasked to make sure that our students get an education, so getting to school is part one. And we are a rural district, so even for the 2 miles, even if it's required by code, I don't think it's an option. We have to continue to look at other options, reducing transportation to students and families within the 2-mile radius. I just don't think that that's something that that we can offer for $95,000, right? We got to continue working on that one, whether it's looking at reducing the bus to the bus route, but providing no transportations to families. Not every family has a stay-at-home parent, and that's just something that it still is of concern. We've been discussing it over the last couple of weeks. So the good thing is that we are within the tax levy, but there are still other things to resolve. So those, I think right now, transportation is number one, at least on my mind, on how do we resolve that and make sure that we get all of our students to school.
It's definitely a challenge. We are limited by the amount of fund balance that we have and what we can use, and we can't ensure that we are going to be able to transport all students, including students that are less than 2 miles from the school, but we are hopeful that we can. That hope requires some things to go our way. So the rerouting of all of the students onto 3 buses, as well as the knowledge of any special education program changes or private school changes or BOCE's choices that students make. All those things affect where our buses are needed and how many. So we are optimistic and hope to be able to transport everyone, including students that are less than 2 miles from the school. But we can't guarantee that right now. We need to make the reduction in order to balance the expenditures and revenues. And we think that we'll be able to do all the students regardless of how far they are. But we need to look at ridership, and we need to look at all of the different combinations of things that come up over the next few months.
I'll just add, coming from committee on this, that the other reductions affect teachers and affect instruction. So that's one of the reasons we went to the bus run. To come out of another line item will affect instruction in the school. There's not a lot of places to go in this budget.
Like if the bus run is about 100, right, that we're saving, and the budget gap is about 200 or 220, we could go to the public and instead of asking for the 3.3 allowable tax levy and ask instead for 5.3 and not cut anything.
Well, I think that was discussed in the Finance Committee as far as an overarching goal this year was to not seek an override this year. Now, we do anticipate that you're going to need an override in the near future and most likely next year. But because it was such a difficult lift and because it was such a challenge to do an override, we are not recommending, and on behalf of the Finance Committee, not recommending 2 overrides in a row.
And as the head of the Finance Committee, I will second and third that notion that I don't believe the community has an appetite for an override this year. And we certainly appreciated them doing it last year, but we've come up with a budget that does not impact student programming. Certainly there are cuts that we're not happy to have to make, but we feel comfortable with this budget going out to the community without an override is certainly a very solid proposal at this point, and we're hopeful for the support. But again, absolutely want the feedback from the community, understand Madeline's concerns about the transportation. Unfortunately, as Joe said, next year is going to be a more difficult year than this year even. We have to figure out how to get transportation costs down. And I think the activity of going through and trying to figure out if we can be more efficient with fewer buses is one that we need to do regardless, even if we have the money to pay for it, because we're not going to have the money to pay for it next year probably. So I'm excited that and very optimistic that Joe will work magic and figure out how to do it. And we will continue this process. Hopefully we can, if there are people have other ways in which they can come up with additional funding, that is certainly something we welcome.
I will say a reduction in special education runs would help too with the transportation budget as well. But at this time, we don't have that.
I mean, I have to say I'm really impressed. Really impressed by the work that you've put into this and by the hard choices that you've proposed. And Kent, that goes for you too. Thank you very much for doing that. I think that one of the things that occurs to me is that I think we really need to begin to be straight with the community that a budget override is in the not distant future, and to really be focused on how to make people understand, given where things are in terms of inflation in this country, the urgent need for that at some point in the foreseeable future, and not to pretend that we can do this, what we've done this year, in future years, because we can't.
Right. This is gap filling with near the last of our available reserves. So there isn't another opportunity to do it.
I will say, though, I think it is the right move to wait on an override this year and give the school community a break from the stress of that, particularly to the people who work in this building every day. I think we need to give them a break from that stress from last year. I think that was a very intense period for us and for the community. So I would like to stay within this within the 3.3.
Yeah, essentially 3.3, yes.
Matt?
So on the state aid question I felt like last year there was talk about COVID having had an impact on the decrease in state aid. Is that inaccurate?
COVID did not have an impact on decreasing aid. What specifically, hurts Garrison is the way the formula works. So the formula has identified that Garrison is not a high-need district. It has people that can afford to pay higher taxes and the students do not have high needs. So with those things, it makes sense that the formula is less.
Has the formula changed recently, or has Garrison always been this far behind in terms of state aid?
The formula has changed recently, and it was really when Cuomo left office unceremoniously. What really happened as a result of that was an acknowledgement by the governor now that there were active court cases that had to do with foundation aid, and that a number of high-need districts were significantly underfunded in terms of full funding of foundation aid. Because what happened was a number of years ago when we had the financial crisis in 2008, and then the tax cap that was put in 2012, there was always a gap between the foundation aid that would be by the formula and what they actually got. And that gap after next year has been filled. So the governor made it a point in last year's budget presentation to say that we understand there's court cases, we've settled those court cases, we're going to fully fund foundation aid. And with that decision came a lot of aid to a lot of school districts. The majority of them, in fact, got significant increases in aid. But there are a number of districts, and Garrison is one of them, where if you look at the formula, we may be 300 or 400% of the formula. So Garrison is considered overfunded by the foundation aid formula. So because there's over 2 years, big increases in aid everywhere, and a lot of the districts that are getting a lot of aid are trying to figure out how they can spend all the money and hire enough teachers to be able to spend it all. We aren't in that position. But, the state is saying, you don't need it. You have the wealth, you have the property wealth, and you don't have the needs. So you shouldn't get more.
Are any of the, and I know we can't budget for this, and it may not be this year, but are any of the awards that were potentially maybe in the running for monetary? No. Oh, just curious.
We might get a flag, though.
It's not nothing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will say a lot of districts, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, raised their tax base, like what their tax levy was, right before the foundation aid formula went into effect, which would have been 2011 is when they started foundation aid, or the tax levy cap.
Oh,
Was it?
the tax
So
cap?
they-
Yeah.
Right before that, a lot of
2012.
Garrison did not. So, like we compare ourselves to Pecanigo Hills, they operate on twice the budget we have. Their tax levy is, it's spread out more, but they're spending twice as much money as we are to do the same amount of programming, essentially. I mean, they have the same number of kids.
Aren't they 3 times?
So we're at 12 million, they're at about 30 million, I believe. I don't know if they've had their presentations. I will make a point to go watch their budget presentations this year. I always find them entertaining. But I don't know what they're looking for this year.
Well, thank you for this.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I just want to point out that we have, as it happens, we have a couple of very successful novelists on the school board, and maybe that, without naming them, they'd be prepared to commit some of their royalties to deal with the budget shortfall. Yeah.
You only get my time, David. That's all you got.
I might be able to fill the tank for the bus at some point.
I will say, I mean, unless anyone else has any other questions, this is a work in progress. This is our first meeting. Things do change, as we saw last year, throughout the process. I know Carl and Joe are trying to work their magic to make everything come together and make all our dreams come true for the budget. So hopefully we will see some changes in the next one and things go in our favor. That does include our lobbying efforts to our senator and assemblywoman. If the community is looking for a way to help, reaching out to our senator and assemblywoman are a great way to start. We've met with them multiple times. They've been very receptive. I feel like they've really listened to us and understand what we're talking about, but that's one way to continue to try and get some money in the door. So the community is looking to take action, please. Our state senator is Rob Rollinson. Our assemblywoman is Dana Levenberg. And you can always reach out to Carl or Joe, and they will provide you maybe with their contact information. I'm sure you can find it online as well. So do we have any other further questions, comments on the draft budget at this time? All right. And we are going to keep going. Thank you, Carl and Joe. Next, we have a revision of the 2022-2023 BOE meeting schedule. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby amends the 2022-2023 board meeting schedule as presented at this meeting. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Before we vote, the big things to note on this are we have moved our meeting from the day after the budget vote to the evening of the budget vote to ratify the results. So that does mean we will come here late at night, but you don't have to come the next night. Yay. And we have added the joint meeting with O'Neill on the 23rd. That's the only changes, correct, Dusty? Okay. So, anyone have any questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. All right. We've come to public comment. Public comment is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns in accordance with Policy 1510 of the Garrison Union Free School District. Any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comments about specific school personnel or individual students is a violation of board policy. Concerns regarding students or personnel should be discussed privately with the superintendent or appropriate administrator. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. The board will listen to comments but will not engage in dialogue. Any necessary follow-up will be noted and provided through the appropriate channel. Members of the public wishing to comment during board meetings are asked to place their name and town of residence on the sign-in sheet. All right. I don't have anyone signed in yet, but there's still time if you want to sign in and say something. Anybody? All right. We'll come back to public comment again at the end of the show. So we're going to move on now to accepting the minutes. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the minutes of the regular meeting of February 1st, 2023 as presented. Well, don't all leave at once. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions. All right. On to our financial reports. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the Treasurer's Report for January 2023 and the Claims Audit Report for January 2023 as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the Treasurer's Report or Claims Audit Report as presented? All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. We move on to committee reports. Kent, Finance Committee? Anything further?
We've talked a lot about what we've been putting together, and this is the work. This is the result of the last couple meetings of the Finance Committee. And again, appreciate all the hard work of Joe, Carl, and everyone, Madeline, and and Sarah in getting this together. More to come, but we've got the planes on the runway, so that's good.
Thank you, Kat. DEI committee report, Jocelyn?
We met in February and mostly discussed the community book read that we'll be doing, and there's a small group working on setting it all up. We've got materials from the company to help us engage families, parents, teachers, and the community, and so hopefully that will be released and we'll all be reading the same book in a couple weeks.
All right. Do you have any questions for Jocelyn? All right. I'm going to keep going here. CSE, CPSE recommendations. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approved the Committee on Special Education, CSE, and the Committee on Preschool Special Education, CPSE, recommendations and student placements. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. We now move on to the personnel consent agenda. Excuse me. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, hereby approves the items of the personnel consent agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Seconded.
Thank you. Carl, would you like to speak to some of these?
Sure. The first is to appoint Mr. James Yap to a 3-year probationary period as the Director of Innovation and Learning. The board certainly will recall, and the public may recall, that James came to us very early in the school year. He was appointed in the same title as his predecessor, which was Director of Technology and Innovation. So we are making a slight title change. But I will say we are making no changes to his job description. He is handling all the technology. We're actually adding to your job description. I shouldn't say we're not making changes. James has impressed us so much. He's a perfect fit for our small admin team. He's led so many instructional initiatives for us. And there are things that were implemented right away, and I was so impressed. The Youth Climate Summit, he collaborated with Rachel Arbor. That is planned. We expanded it. We invited our 3 high schools to join us. It's very exciting. He's already moving on the Green Ribbon Initiative. And it's not just about getting the award. It's about that process and examining what we're doing and in those 3 pillars that I talked about earlier. And it's giving us a focus and a motivation. And certainly if we do receive the award next year, we'll be very proud. But the process, in my opinion, is what really counts. And it's great work happening here. The Seal of Civic Readiness, another collaboration of his with Chrissy Albano. And we're looking at things into the future. You know, we're taking a look at computer-based testing for all students. That is a requirement, but we're piloting it this year. So James is leading those efforts and many more, and he's got some fantastic ideas. We did hire him on a 1-year basis because it was the school year had begun, and he was available and willing to come to Garrison. He was in a position, but he was encouraged to come to our district. 2 superintendents that I know exceptionally well reached out to sing his praises, and they were correct on every point that they made. We've gotten to know him, and I'm very confident in this recommendation for a 3-year term contract for James, and I'm certain he will continue to add value to our instructional program, our teaching. He's a great support to the faculty, to the admin team, and the district in general. So that is one personnel item recommendation. The second one is for a cleaner. You may recall we've had a vacancy for some time. It was a bit of a challenge to fill the position, but we believe we have a very high-level person by the name of Jeremy Yakonovitz. Jeremy worked in construction for, I believe, about 18 years. It has a range of skills, but masonry skills, carpentry skills. He's done a pretty wide range of work. He is coming on board as a cleaner, but I do think he'll be able to contribute even beyond that here in our school district. So we're excited to welcome him if the board approves that. And then the next one is a school psychologist position. Mr. David Roper is, I believe, here. Now, now, when it's official, David, we'll invite you up to say a quick hello to the board members. But David has been working as a school psychologist. Currently, he's in the Mayapack School District at the middle school. But prior to that, he was in the Washingtonville School District at an elementary level, which is just a great fit as far as his experience. He chairs CSEs, he chairs 504s, he leads RTI meetings. His diagnostics, we are told, are exceptional. He can evaluate students, and the feedback was just tremendous from both of those districts. Mrs. Amig ran the search. She did a wonderful job. It was unanimous. The entire committee just thought he would be a perfect fit for Garrison. So I am very confident in this recommendation as well. He is not starting now. We're hiring him early, but he will start officially August 30th. But we're also planning to bring him in over the summer and do some transition work with him, get him acclimated to the school, the staff, and familiar with our students. And lastly, Mrs. Amig recommended a per diem substitute to work with us. I believe she's a retired teacher, Diane Weglarts. And this is not an everyday sub. It's a sub as needed. And certainly, it comes in handy to have a good group of subs that are willing to help us when they're needed.
Thank you. Do I have any questions for Carl regarding the personnel as presented? I just have one. When you say we're moving to computer-based testing, that happens next year. Is it for all our tests, regents, the 3rd through 8th?
It's
Just
ELA and math.
Just ELA and math, 3rd through 8th.
And I apologize, and also for science.
And also for science. I'm just repeating what he says because he's at the mic. Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify because I hadn't heard that. All right. Okay. Then I guess we don't have any other questions. We'll move to a vote. All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right. Nays? Abstentions?
Absolutely. David Roper.
David, would you like to come up and say hello?
Yes.
Thank you. You've waited so long. Yeah, the podium's right there if you want to say anything. You don't have to. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you did stay.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to join the team. Everyone has been so welcoming, and I haven't even started yet. So it's a pleasure to meet all you, and I really look forward to continuing to get to know you and work with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Welcome, David.
All right, we're going to move on then to new business. We have a request for approval of sports merger for the 2023-2024 school year with the Haldane Central School District. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves the sports mergers for a modified football, girls modified softball, boys modified baseball, boys modified lacrosse, girls modified lacrosse, and modified cross country with Haldane Central School District for the 2022-2024 school year. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Carl, do you want to speak to these before we move on?
Sure. These are standard sports mergers, with the exception of soccer. Soccer has become very popular in Garrison, and we do have enough athletes, student athletes, to have our Garrison team, and we have no need to merge. So we're excited about that. Additionally, Mr. Beckley is reaching out to our other 2 high schools, and he will look for opportunities for mergers. He's having conversations with the athletic directors there. What we're being cautious about is we don't want to do a merger that may negatively impact our teams and have too many students where we cannot run the teams that we have in place here at Garrison. But if there are opportunities in specific sports that we have students interested in, he will be sending out a student and parent survey to our 7th and 8th grade parents for next year who are eligible for sports to get feedback and try to gauge interest. So there may be some more mergers in the future, but these are what we're proposing for this evening.
Do you have any questions on the sports mergers as presented for Carl? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nay. Abstentions. All right, we move on to our second public comment section of the evening. I'm not going to read my paragraph again, but everyone left. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close public comment and move on to board member comment and other discussion. Jocelyn? David?
Yeah, I'll say something. I think tonight's meeting really demonstrates the incredible leadership that Carl has given this district. I mean, some things have happened tonight. I mean, this very difficult business of figuring out how to manage the budget. And it's not just you. I understand that. I mean, Joe is involved. Kent is involved. James, I'm sure, is involved. But your leadership has really been extraordinary. And you know, you've brought us tonight 2 new hires. That the Spanish presentation was just extraordinary. I mean, the quality of this administration is amazing. In a relatively small district, you just done a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you, David. But I will say it is definitely a team effort. Every member of our staff, including the admin team, but the entire organization, I think we've made some incredible hires over the past 2 years.
But leadership needs to be acknowledged at the top.
Okay. Madeline? No comment. Okay. Courtney?
No comment.
Kent?
No, just thanks, Dusty, and everyone for accommodating my absence in person tonight. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll just say it looks like a really nice ballroom foyer you're in. That looks great. Thank you for making the time to join.
It's cold and raining here. Not really. It's really not that nice outside. Not listening.
Matt? Okay, I have no further comment this evening. We will now move to executive session. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby enters into executive session for the purpose of discussing collective negotiations with the GTA bargaining unit pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law. May I have a motion, please?
Seconded.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, and we will adjourn executive session without any further action being taken. Please shut down your computers, turn everything off. Thank you very much.